Hey, pastors and church leaders, my name is Brandon Donaldson. I lead church partnerships here at YouVersion. And as you know, we've been talking about hybrid, what it is, what it isn't, and how we can embrace this hybrid mindset in our churches. And as you know, YouVersion is a part of Life Church. And we realize that Life Church is just one expression of the capital C Church. So I'm real excited to have a conversation today with another local church, Church of the Highlands, as we hear how they lean into this hybrid model. And specifically, we're going to talk about how they lean into hybrid in their prayer initiatives like 21 Days of Prayer. So I'm real excited to have David Russell with us. David, welcome.
Thanks so much, Brandon. It's wonderful to be with you and to all the pastors and church leaders watching there too. Thanks so much for your time. Brandon, I love what you guys do at Life Church. So thankful for our friendship over the years, man. Known you a really long time. And just thankful for how you guys lead the way in technology and ministry. And it's an honor to be a part of this, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we have known each other for a long time, and it's been awesome to see the journey we've been on, see our churches have been on. And just so everybody knows, David Russell is the online campus pastor and the digital director. I don't know how he does this. I don't know if he knows how he does this through the power of God. At Church of the Highlands, such an influential church, and what you do specifically is such a big part of what happens there. So I think the best way to help us get started is for you to just give an overview of Church of the Highlands.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you so much. Love to tell this story. We're just really amazed at all God has done in the last 20 years here at Highlands. And it started, a lot of people don't know the full backstory that started actually before Highlands was ever launched. Our senior pastor was on staff at a church as an associate pastor in Louisiana and was loving his time there, was in a season of prayer with the church, a corporate prayer season. And the Lord started talking to him about the possibility of this, and it started as a dream in that moment. And out of that prayer season, the idea for Church of the Highlands was born. And fast forward 1 year, spring of 2001, the best time to plant a church is January. I mean, it's the best month, first start, fresh year. A lot of people jumping back into church. And at the time, that was obviously something our leadership understood. But thankfully, what our senior pastor also understood is that we needed to take a moment and pray first. And so that's exactly what we did. That core launch team that helped launch Church of the Highlands in those very early days. Instead of launching in January, that team opted to launch in February and spent 21 days of prayer and fasting, believing over this dream of a church to become a reality and impact Birmingham and cities all over the state. And here we are 20 years later with 25 locations, and including one in Columbus, Georgia. So now we're outside of Alabama now too. And it's just wonderful to see the way God has moved through this. And we really go back to that moment a lot and talk about it a lot, because starting with prayer became kind of a culture of our church. It wasn't just something we do. It's not just, it's not just a part of who we are as believers. Of course it is, but it became really a part of our identity as a church. And people begin to know us for like, hey, that's a church that prays. We have a senior pastor, Pastor Chris Hodges. He gets on his knees and prays. You know it when you're around him, and he models that. And for the rest of those who have come into Highlands over the years, has just seen the culture of prayer around our church. And we know firmly that this is why God's moved so powerfully in our church. It's not just something that we've done. There's not some special secret sauce that we figured out, a system or a process or a way of attracting people to church. No, it's the Holy Spirit that's moving. And we really believe it's out of those prayer seasons that we've continued to have, by the way, that God's continued to move in our church. And yeah, I mean that's a big part of who we are, as a church.
Yeah, I mean, personally, and one reason I'm excited about this, we're talking about hybrid solutions, and I love that. But it really comes down to, when I think of Church of the Highlands, I think of prayer. Like personally, Pastor Chris, I say is my prayer pastor, and the difference he's made in my life personally around prayer, our team's life here at Life Church, and even at YouVersion, is really significant. I know that many pastors could say that. So I'm excited to talk about this just for that reason, because anytime we talk about hybrid, It's not about just the method. It's not about digital and online. We want to do that because the mission is so great. And this is one of those pieces, prayer for you, that's so, well, for all of us, is critical. But I love how you guys model and lead through that. So anytime I think of Church of the Highlands, I think of 21 days of prayer. That's how I was initially sort of brought in. Our church has done that along with your church. You guys have led the way for so many churches. We still do it. And so I think of this 21-day prayer. I'd love for you to talk about that, a little overview on 21 days of prayer specifically, and then how you've embraced sort of this hybrid mindset with 21 days of prayer.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. Thanks so much, Brandon. Yeah. So 21 days of prayer is kind of a thing that, kind of began in our hearts, like I said, right at the inception of our church. And what we felt like we wanted to do there is have a prayer season in the critical times of our church. And so because we started in January, when the first August rolled around and the first fall seasons kind of rolled around, we knew we wanted to pray first as well over the harvest of people that were likely to make commitments for Jesus in that fall season. Since that point, we've always had a season of corporate prayer. Our entire church, we invite everyone to come and pray with us for 21 days at a time. And so one prayer season in January and another in August. And in the January prayer season, we do have an emphasis on fasting. So we do encourage that and have some resources available and kind of help talk people through what that might look like for them, be it food or some other thing that might be kind of standing in the way of the voice of the Lord in their lives, right? And then in August as well. And so we've had these two prayer seasons, 21 days each, for every year since the beginning of our church. And what we do is we just ask people, hey, come pray with us. And we have a prayer focus every day. We start early, 6 a.m. local time. That's to hopefully get people in before work and things like that. And of course, there's still a lot of challenges with families, getting kids to school and things like that. We understand, but you would be just amazed. I mean, we have traffic jams at 6 a.m. in the morning at a church. I mean, it's as close to revival as anything I've ever seen.
For people coming to pray. Traffic jams.
Yeah, for people coming to, it's a prayer service. I mean, this is not at the movies. This is a prayer service. And so just to see the heart of our church and the heart of our people that are faithful to this, and they understand this is not just something that leadership tries to exemplify. This is something our church embodies. This is who we are. And so to see thousands and thousands of people, showing up to pray, throughout those 21 days is pretty amazing. So Monday through Friday, we start at 6 o'clock. Saturdays, we get to sleep in a little bit. We start at 9 a.m. on Saturdays. And on Sundays, we just incorporate the prayer moment into our Sunday services. So we all pray together that way. But so for those 21 days, we have a different prayer focus every day. And we tend to start off a service with a worship song or two. And then we have a teaching or an encouragement around prayer. So one of our pastors or someone on our team will just talk to us about how to pray, what to pray for, what focus would we have today, and then just a word of encouragement. And then for about 30 minutes in the middle of this service, we pray kind of individually. So we just release people. We have songs playing actually pretty loudly. You'd be a little surprised, but we do that for just privacy. It lets people be able to pray out loud, which we encourage if people are comfortable with this. And just have a moment. It's about 30 minutes. It's individual prayer, but it's based on how we've kind of been guided into the focus for the day. And so we might be praying for a specific area of the church, or for families, or for marriages, or for healing, or something like that. And so we have that time. And then at the end of the service, that same pastor or the person who spoke in the beginning will come back up and just lead us in prayer for that closing 15 minutes. And we keep it to an hour. I mean, people have to then leave from there and go to work. So we're careful with that to make sure that we respect, the time involved there. But it's powerful. We actually even take our prayer requests that are filled out on a connection card from Sundays, and we put those out on tables, and people can come up and grab prayer requests and prayer cards. And they can pray over specific people's needs during that kind of individual prayer time. But that structure of the services, I think it's important. I mean, I don't think churches have to model exactly like that, but I think it's important because it helps to kind of unite us in spirit and heart around what we're, focused on, right, for that given day. And so we've had some people who they go through 21 days of prayer and they wake up on day 22 and there still is they don't want the prayer season to be over. Really none of us do. But they wake up on day 22 and they have almost a sense of calling or purpose around prayer. And so we have prayer small groups that they can join. We actually have a curriculum called Day 22, which is a prayer curriculum for our small groups. But we also invite people to join our prayer teams. And we have a couple of different expressions of prayer teams that were really born out of, again, this sort of just culture of prayer, or this expression of prayer, this heart for God and moving God through our prayers. And one is a intercessory prayer team that prays over our Sunday services. So every single Sunday of the history of our church, we've had a team of people interceding in a room behind the scenes, somewhere kind of behind a wall somewhere. But they're praying over our services, and they're praying for the people who are in those services. They're praying for Pastor Chris or whoever may be leading the service that day, and our worship teams and our dream team, which is what we call our volunteers who might be serving others. But that prayer dream team is so vitally important, particularly on Sundays, because they're, the watchmen on the walls, they're standing in the gap. They are interceding for what's taking place. And we've had that again every Sunday since the very first Sunday of our church. And we also have other ways that a dream team or a volunteer can serve in prayer. We have a growth track. We want people to serve in their purpose and the way God's, wired them up and their personality. And we want to really fit well in the way that they're serving the church. But this is the one area of the church that our pastor just unashamedly asks people to join this effort. Say, hey, step up in this particular way. If you don't know what to do, then join the prayer team. If you have any at all indication that you need to be serving this way, please join the prayer team. And because we need it. I mean, it's like kind of like the one team that if we didn't have, honestly, the rest of this probably wouldn't work. That just gives you a glimpse kind of into the heart of why we do what we do and kind of how this has shaped us as a church over the last 20 years.
I just love how that and it really was birthed out of this 21-day prayer, beginning at the very church, but then prayer now. I know you guys do it every Saturday, you do it every Sunday, you're doing it all the time. When it comes to 21 days of prayer, and this is what's interesting in this conversation as people are starting to think of this hybrid, because sometimes that can just sort of turn the corner and it's like, well, what does this mean? But prayer is so important to you guys. And this is not the same thing as an online service. This is more of a family community thing that's really building up your church. But I want you to talk about how, I know you specifically have been a part of this, but how you began to think of this hybrid. In other words, digital supporting and maybe even bringing, continuing this momentum, pandemic hits, all of these kinds of things. What has that looked like for 21 Days of Prayer specifically is a good place to start when it comes to this hybrid model?
Yeah, that's so great, Brandon. I think in some ways we can look at where we are today and just go, I mean, wow, we're really astonished at how many, we have thousands of people that connect to our, 20 Days of Prayer online. We stream Saturday morning prayer now. We have all these digital kind of opportunities and ways to connect in prayer that we see today. But it started really very humbly. I don't know that we had that vision in mind. I'm not sure I necessarily saw all of that potential in this. I love the way you explain it, because that's exactly what it is. We feel it's in the moment. I mean, a lot of times what we're praying specifically for what's happening that day. Sometimes it's news headlines. Sometimes it's things that are going on in our country or in the world. Sometimes and of course, things like the pandemic, where every day now, that's going to be one of our prayer topics, to just ask God to, relieve us of this and protect us and just asking for his kingdom come, his will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. But going back to the start of this, when we first decided the first thing we did was let's stream 21 Days of Prayer. We were doing it for our Sunday services. We were connecting with people through church online. And it was a really wonderful expression, but kind of a different mindset, if I'm being honest, like back then about streaming 21 days. We just knew there were people who had to get their kids off to school and they couldn't necessarily come in person. And so we were trying to think of it as like a resource and maybe just a way to, again, connect us all. And no matter where we are, to draw our church family together, if they're in person or if they're online, it's that same assembly of folks who are focused on one thing and choosing to start their day by praying first. And that's kind of how it began. And slowly over that first year or two, we just started to see other use cases. Like we were kind of surprised by some of the people who were watching. We had pastors from other churches who were one of the initial groups to kind of predominantly start plugging in. And they were just joining us really personally, like individually, and kind of following along with us, and hopefully kind of being refreshed in the process, because they spend all their time refreshing others. Sometimes it's good. I can even remember seeing local pastors walking around even in person, the halls of some of our campuses. Hey, and glad you're here, kind of a thing. And so what ended up happening though from that is those pastors caught the vision for what 21 days of prayer can do in a church. What it can do to unite people in like mind and like spirit, like heart. And to be focused on a season, to know that, hey, this what God's about to do this spring or this fall. We've got to prepare our hearts. We have to be ready as the workers to receive the harvest that's gonna come. And so we want to honor God first in that process, but also we have to have it. We have to go through a season of preparation. So we want to ask God to do big things around us, but we're also asking God to do big things in us. And so as these pastors kind of saw that opportunity, they just said, "Hey, can I just show this? Can we join you?" Basically, and we said, "Absolutely, of course." And this thing became kind of a movement, honestly, way more than we could have ever imagined. We now have hundreds of churches that plug in with us, and some of them stream. Some of them actually do a little bit of both. They kind of stream some services. They may lead some of their own. Some of them can entirely lead all their own services, but just are kind of with us in the spirit of and try to do it around the same time of the year and things like that. Some churches do it at different times of the year. At the end of the day, what matters most is the church is praying. The people of God, the bride of Christ, is praying. We're on our knees. We're humbled. We're asking God to do great things, and we're putting Him before our own agenda. We're putting Him before our own goals, our own thoughts, our own ideas. We're saying, God, we don't. At the end of the day, we want your agenda, your goals, your ideas to flow through us. And so it's really taken off. And so and I would say that I don't know how that could have happened if we had not had this online expression, if we had not opened up our minds to this idea that yes, it's in person, but it's also online. And the reality is these aren't two different things. They are the same. They're the same. Right. We're gathering people together. They're experiencing these things, in the same ways. And it's good that some people can now close the laptop and then go take care of kids and get them off to school. That's a wonderful benefit. But also, hey, for those pastors who go, I can actually just click play on this, put it up on ProPresenter or whatever on a display on a wall somewhere, and we can do this as really one church, truly one church.
What I've always, I think I read this in a book one time about technology, and technology can't create momentum. Obviously, God only creates momentum, but it can scale momentum exponentially. It can really take it. And I think when we experience things like that, and you guys have experienced it, we got to experience because you're willing to do that. Like you said, it was not two different things, it was one thing, and people got to be in the moment, this is a real time event, like you said. And just dreaming up how can we use tools. I know even some of we would say smaller things, but have been huge for the church is all of the different digital assets you guys have created because of this, because you're so faithful to serve the church. You've got the prayer models that you guys preach and talk about so much that you use in that 21-day prayers, just an agenda for churches to follow. And all of those things, sometimes we forget as churches, like that is this idea of saying, hey, this is how we can think hybrid. It's not a either or thing, but it's a both and then with the mission being the whole point, the prayer in this case being the point. So, well, we're so thankful for it. I'm curious, as we're talking through this, what are some other things that you guys, specifically during the pandemic, that you took online and you've seen and you just continue to do those things online that maybe you didn't, or maybe you did in different ways?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, we definitely had some prayer specific things. January was obviously a prayer season. We were in person, and by August here in Alabama of the first year last year, we were able to come back in person, but obviously in kind of limited fashion. And so we knew there would be a vast majority of folks who would be connecting with us online, through that moment. And so we did a lot to press things online. So we have a thing we call Pray First Guide, and it's basically a collection of prayer plans. It's a model for prayer. So the Lord's Prayer, I think, is commonly known as a model for prayer. Jesus modeled it as, hey, here's how you pray. But there are a number of other models in Scripture that over the years we've kind of talked about and taught on that's similar to the Lord's Prayer, can kind of help people give a structure to prayer, hopefully in a way. Look, at the end of the day, it's not like there's a way to pray that's somehow more powerful than the other, right? God just wants our heart. We can say two words, and it might be one of the most compelling prayers that God's heard from us ever, right? So it's not about necessarily what we say or how we say it, but we can certainly, I see it as a deepening of our own faith. When we go through prayer models, sometimes we come to a point and we've never really thought about, as an example, Lord's Prayer. Why do we start with hallowed be your name? Why is that one of the first things that Jesus modeled in prayer to give glory to God? Well, because that's where we should start. We don't jump right to our needs, right? We don't start in the middle of a conversation with someone about, hey, I need this. We go, hey, how are you, man? It's good to see you, man. It's been a long time. Well, and that's what we need to do the same thing for. We need to give him honor. So just sometimes people it's kind of a revelation where you go, well, I've never really thought about that. So these prayer guides and prayer plans can sort of, I think, help deepen our faith. It doesn't necessarily make our prayers any more powerful. God just, wants to see our humble hearts, but it can increase our faith into understanding what's possible and seeing what God might be able to do. And so these prayer plans are we packaged them together in this kind of booklet form. I don't know, maybe 10, 12 years ago or something. It's kind of been a thing we just sort of had at our prayer services. And if somebody wants it, they can take it. And of course, our pastor uses them. It models a lot of these prayer plans, with people during our prayer season, as just a way of teaching on it, how to leverage it and how to use it. But that guide we took and made a kind of a PDF version and said, man, let's make sure people can have this, if they need it. The prayer cards I was telling you about, the connection card requests, when we get prayer requests, we have a digital prayer card. And so we take those in-person and digital or online prayer cards and we put them together, and our prayer teams pray over them through the week, as well as our Saturday morning prayer service. We make them available for people to pray over. And so we've done that. And so we've done that with 21 days of prayer as well. So every day there's prayer cards on a table. Well, we don't have tables. we can't hand things out, So we're like, well, what can we do? So we just created a really simple thing. It's a document online. We had a QR code. People could walk up, take that QR code, links over to the list of prayer needs. They can open it up on their device. And I mean, again, extremely simple. This was not like some elegant app that, we spent a bunch of money on. This was done, very quickly, but it worked. And it's like, wow. I mean, people were able to continue that effort of praying over the needs of the people of our church without missing a beat. And so, and of course, there were other things that we did. Our growth track, we had never really done an online growth track before. This is where we're encouraging people to take certain steps. A lot of churches now have this type of process where people can kind of take steps or classes or whatever you want to call it to get to know the church, become a member, maybe plug into the volunteer team, whatever that looks like. And so we'd never had that expression online before. So that was one of the things we were like, well, we certainly want to continue to allow people to go through this process. And so that's one of the things that we also loved and has stuck around. And there were people who'd never been able to, they've been here 2-3 years, never been able to go through the growth track just because of a work schedule or a family situation or, all kinds of things. And so it freed that up. And so lots of wins around some of those things that we were kind of not forced to do, really very willing to do. It was like we could have just hung on for the ride, but so glad we didn't. So glad we walked through this initially as an opportunity. It wasn't like it wasn't just like oh, what was us? What are we going to do? It was opportunity. So a lot of the things that we ramped up in that space, now it actually, as things are settling, it's interesting to see how it works because it's really right down that hybrid line. Like what we're talking about here is that really it's not either or. People are interacting with the church in all kinds of ways. It doesn't matter that it's digital or in person or whatever. This is how our lives work right now. When I interact with my wife, I see her in the morning, give each other a hug and a kiss, and she goes on with her day, I go on with mine. But, usually by 10 or 11 o'clock, I might send her a text or, just something, it's just natural. I might go on Facebook, like a post or something of hers, or just comment on a family member's post or something. It's become so natural for us to kind of move in and out that there's not even anything to move in and out of anymore. It's just part of the way things work. We're seeing as a church it's happening naturally. And the pandemic certainly helped, I think, people to sort of understand there's opportunities. We had a lot of people who gave online for the first time as a result of the pandemic because they just didn't have a way to physically get a check to the church or, maybe mailing or something like that. But they just said, well, okay, I'll try this. And they're not going back, because they're like, wow, there's a convenience and there's an ease to it. There's not a difference in their giving expression or their heart in it. And so things like that we're realizing are just, it's like then let's just be there. Let's
Yeah.
have all of these opportunities. Let's make it available as much as we can. And now there's online interactions that take place in a service. And in our online services, we're encouraging some in-person connections, and so it's this, there you go. That's where we're at. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how you're saying it's natural, because I think that can be, it's weird when we hear even the hybrid work can start having, it has the connotation of, because you think digital. And it is, it's trying to pull those things together. But really, this idea of hybrid, what we're talking about, is really something we all experience, no matter what size church we're at, no matter how old we are. Somehow, like, one of the things I love about these kinds of conversations is help people understand we're really talking about something that's natural. Now, COVID really did push it. And I love how you said, even when you guys did the growth track online, you realized there were actually people that wanted to do the growth track maybe for years, but really couldn't do it. But then you created a way that they could, and they are bought into the church. They're all in, and they were able to. And so it was, COVID, like you said, even helped churches like Life Church and Church of the Highlands realize, hey, we've got a long way to go here, because how can we help fulfill the mission God's given us and allow people to access that mission seamlessly, regardless of how they interact online or in person. So this sort of leads to a question I think would be really good for you to talk to pastors and church leaders, because here at Life Church, Church of the Highlands, we've been friends for a long time, and a lot of it has been around, like, we've been in digital ministry for a long, long time. So we've embraced technology as churches. So from your point of view, overseeing technology at a church like yours for so many years, and realizing there's so many pastors and church leaders that have maybe a fear or a little bit of anxiety or maybe a misunderstanding, just hesitant to lean into it. What would you say to that pastor or church leader, and what are some of your suggestions to them?
First of all, I understand. I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of pastors over the years that have connected with us and just asked a lot of wonderful questions. Honestly, some of the questions challenging. I mean, 11 years later, we're still thinking through it. Is there
Yes.
what better way? Are there people we're not reaching because of just something we didn't know, existed? But the first thing I like to always start out and say is that it's not about technology. I'm a technologist by passion. Like, I'm a geek. I mean, I read the blogs, and I'm watching all of the Apple keynotes, and whatever. I just enjoy technology. I just had a passion for it since I was a kid. My dad bought us a computer when I was 8 years old. It was 1989. Paid like
Yeah.
$3,500 for an IBM PS1 or something.
I was an
But
early computer person.
awesome.
Yes. Floppy
There you go.
disks and all. Yeah.
That's it. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Some
you
people are
you
like, what
take
are
it
they
out
talking
and
about?
oh no, they have no idea. But yeah, I've just always had a passion for it. And when I got called to ministry, I thought I'm just going to default into being maybe a youth minister or a worship pastor. I play guitar and have led worship, and I just thought, well, that's going to be my place then. And my very first full-time role in ministry, my title was digital pastor. And it was like the Lord just kind of showed me, like, hey, listen, I've put that passion in you, for a reason. And I've been blessed to be able to have, an expression of my passion, but also fulfill my calling in ministry ever since then. But technology is not, as much as I love technology, we risk exalting technology above ministry if we're not careful. We start talking more about platforms and what are you using for this and what tools for this. We got to stop and remind ourselves the business that we're in is the business of people. The Great Commission and the Great Commandment are very, very clear around people. It says to go, so we got to figure out a way to go. It says to love your neighbors, so we got to figure out a way to love our neighbors. Right. And in that, I think, is where technology can fit as one of many mediums. Really, it's the same as a platform. It's the same as a microphone and a PA system. At the end of the day, it's the same as the printing press that the Bible's printed on. So at the end of the day, technology it's a medium. It's a mode of connecting people with one another. It's a mode of sharing the gospel with people. So if we understand that, then it's really simple. Technology serves ministry. Ministry leads, technology follows and fulfills. And as long as you keep that order correct, then I love it all. You know what I'm saying? But as soon as
Right.
we start talking more about how awesome technology is and blah 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 blah, and we sort of put ministry in a back seat, or we put the Great Commission somewhere else a little bit in this process, that's where we would miss it. So I think I don't think
Mm.
really any of the pastors certainly listening to this are going to risk that. But I think it's worth saying that it puts it in the right perspective. So we're not out there just only talking about technology. It's just a means, and we're just trying to figure out how to do ministry better with this means in one case. So I would say start simple. Just find an area. If you're not doing anything, digitally, just find maybe a way to start a live stream, or have a group that connects via FaceTime or something. There's plenty of ways where you can just start really small. Some churches, honestly, I think the pastor needs to be personally involved somehow. And even if you don't feel very technologically savvy or equipped, don't worry about that. I tell churches all the time, they're trying to put their IT director as their online campus pastor. I'm like, it may work. That person may have a heart for that in the ministry, but that's not necessarily the prime person I'd be looking for.
Right.
I'd be looking for the people person. I'd be looking for the person who's already a small group leader, or already someone who's engaging with people in a ministry level, because the technology is very easy to train on. That's not that big a deal relative to the people skills that are necessary to pull this off. So just remember that. So you could start with something like a Sunday service, but also there are a lot of churches who've been doing this for a while. I'll tell you, when we started church online at Highlands, it was 2009. We started talking about it. Pastor Chris, came to me and just said, "Hey, you're the guy. Lead this effort. Let's go reach people online." It's a really simple mission. And so worked to build up the team. And in the course of that conversation, he's kind of, well, what's it going to look like? How's this going to work? And I went right to Life Church and I said, it's going to look like this, and it's going to work like this. The model was already there for us. And so for me, it was a no-brainer to go ahead and start based on something that I know has been successful elsewhere. So do learn and glean from other churches. And at the same time, don't get so fit into that there may be something you need to bring to the body of Christ at large with an idea. I just left a conference a few weeks ago, and it was literally all about ideas around how to potentially engage, in this way. And so at the end of the day, just know whatever decision you make, I like to tell my team this all the time. You can almost get hung up and insecure a little bit about your decision. Should we do this? Should we not? I'm not sure. What I would say is if you're feeling prompted by the Holy Spirit and you feel like you're ready for this, and you have the people, and you have, what you need to just start simple and small, but just start, go for it, because nothing's irreversible. Like, if it doesn't work, move on, change your course, figure out another way, try it a different way. You don't have to be so hung up on, nailing it week one. We did not nail it week one. It was year one. We were still figuring things out.
We did not either.
Yeah, totally. You can't wait until you got it nailed. Sometimes you just gotta jump at it. You gotta make it happen. So that'd be some things I'd encourage pastors to. And at the end of the day, if you don't feel led of the Holy Spirit to do this, then don't. Just have freedom in that too. God's going to equip you. God's going to give you the people in your church. I will say, have conversations with people, because you'll probably be surprised at who's there and who's willing to even maybe lead this effort or serve this effort for your church. If you think you don't have people in your church who could lead this, you might be surprised if you throw it out there who actually comes back to say, I want to own this. This is me. I feel a fulfillment of calling when you threw this idea out there. So at least give it a shot. But it's something that I hope is for every church. But there may be other things God's trying to hone in with your church and your service expression and things like that you need to work on first. Your small groups, or maybe a growth track, or some sort of a process like that you need to be focused on initially, and that's okay. But don't just lay this aside forever either. Once a year, every 6 months or so, pick it back up, talk about it, see what you can do, see how you can improve it, and realize it's not even just about streaming anymore. A lot of what we're talking about with this hybrid idea, it's online connection cards, it's ways to submit prayer requests through a website, it's ways to register for a conference or a small group online. We're working on getting our small groups curriculum further out, not just on our website, but further into some of the things we're doing here to make it more convenient for small group leaders to be able to lead those types of groups. There's so many ideas around this that once you start to talk through it, you're like, oh, well, that's not what I think of when I think of digital. It's just, but all of a sudden you're connecting with people. All of a sudden you're adding convenience for those that you're equipping for the work of ministry. You're helping equip them even more because they live in a world of technology. And at some point, there's going to be an expectation that your church provides via technology things that help people do the work of ministry. And so I look at it as biblical at the end of the day. That's what our job is as pastors, church leaders,
Yeah.
equip those saints for their work of ministry. How do we equip them in 2021? Hybrid. It's both and, it's all of it.
It makes me think for these pastors and church leaders too, is that you never want to be led by fear. And I think that would be the other thing, is if it's fear that's keeping you, then pick it back up and really pray through that, because you want to be led by faith. And that doesn't mean that we won't be anxious about it, because I think that's not just digital. That's any new thing that we jump into, like you said, because anything we do, if it doesn't work, let's go find the thing that will, right? And I think that's just great. So if just before we close, then we've talked about 21 days of prayer. Church of the Highlands, you didn't talk about this, but you guys just did the Pray First
app. Yeah.
That really just does all these things, more sort of digital stuff to push what's going on. How can people get connected to some of these resources, to your church, to things we've been talking about?
We do have a lot of resources available for around this, because kind of once this started to become bigger and really become a movement some years ago, those were some of the first questions we got asked is, hey, can we get access to this document? And of course, the answer is yes. So even if there's something that maybe we do, but you don't see for some reason, please let me know, email me, and I'll be happy to get you whatever you need to do this in your church. If you want to partner with us in 21 Days of Prayer, we'd love for you to do that as well. You can email us at info@churchhighlands.com, and just as a pastor, just let us know that you're joining us, and we'll thank you for that, obviously, and encourage you. And if there's a way we can kind of help give you some basic, even technical instructions for our live stream, or again, just give you the model for it, let you do that in your own church, and let you run with it. Either way, we'd love to have churches partner with us more and join us for those prayer seasons. And then thanks for mentioning the Pray First app. We love what you guys have done with the Bible app. It's very inspiring. I love the YouVersion for Churches vision. We are can't wait to see how God's going to use this for his kingdom. And so thank you guys again for leading the way. We'll just encourage people, again, not about trying to pray better. It's just about trying to deepen our own faith in our prayer lives. And that was the heart behind it. When we started building it, and God's really blessed it. And so we feel some momentum, going back to what we were talking about earlier. Anyway, thank you, man, so much for that.
Man, I love you. Thank you so much for what you do personally. Thank you on behalf of us as the Capital C Church on this side to Church of the Highlands. Your heart to serve the church is obvious. And this is one of those things. I love that we're talking about a hybrid solution, but a lot of churches are going to get changed because of the prayer pieces that we're talking through, and that's the whole point. And so thank you so much for being a part, and thank you all for joining us and being a part. I'm excited about the conversations you're going to have with your team around hybrid solutions, and even maybe some of the things you see momentum happening in your church, and how you can use hybrid to continue and even scale that more. And remember, it's not about the methods or the tools. They're just the means to the mission. Mission is always first. Thank you, guys.